One of the really big hot button issues right now in Canada is the debate over the Quebec Charter of Values. It's a document that's about to set some serious historical precedent and is being made a major issue by the Parti Québécois right now. This is something that they're really enthusiastic about pushing through. It's something they really want to get done. But what exactly is all this about, and what is it doing? There is a justified big backlash against it, after all. It does violate religious freedom inside Quebec. The project contains 5 propositions revolving around 2 principal aspects: the establishment of tags to manage requests for religious accommodations, and secondly, the declaration of neutrality of the state, in particular prohibiting all public employees from wearing ostentatious religious symbols, which means large religious symbols would effectively be banned. But as we can see from the example chart, it's just a little bit stacked in one group's favor. Well, the fact is the rules are not neutral. The state in Quebec is not neutral. The pro-fascist premier Maurice Duplessis in 1936 put a crucifix inside the National Assembly, essentially, and he said as a gigantic symbol of the relationship between the provincial government and the Catholic Church. So we can see this is actually one of those things that is not going to be removed. I mean, it's been explicitly stated that this is going to remain, which means there's no real intention to have a separation of church and state. It will stack, historically, even from a pro-fascist, connected to the Catholic Church. This is all being brought forth by the Parti Québécois. Now, I don't think the timing of this is a coincidence in any way, shape, or form. Now, they have traditionally been pretty left, and in fact, up to their election to a minority government, they've been very much having leftist policies in support of popular initiatives, lowering healthcare taxes, taxes on getting healthcare, doing things in favor of students, doing this and that from the popular will, killing Proposition 78, and all those kinds of things. But as usual in politics, the PQ has pretty much just gone completely all against that and put through severe austerity measures, cutting things that people need. In other words, politics as usual. Since they pretty much already have the vote of the so-called left in Quebec, what they're reaching out for now to get rid of this minority status and to get to a majority status is essentially the xenophobic right wing. The PQ, I think, is making a tremendous political move trying to reach out and get that, right-wing extremists, the xenophobes, the ones who hate anything that isn't white and Catholic in the province, and trying to get them on their side. I think this whole value charters thing, aside from essentially almost being a human rights violation, is just a grab at power from the right wing in order to better solidate their position within the National Assembly. Essentially, there really is no emergency to be dealt with here for accommodations for religious symbols inside Quebec. A person having these symbols doesn't actually threaten Quebec national identity at all. Just because someone chooses to wear like a hijab or a turban, this doesn't conduct an assault against, so-called Quebec culture. It's literally someone just wearing something. It almost seems very much like this is just a proto-fascist stance to try to erase other cultures from Quebec. Well, Quebec exists within a multicultural nation. That's what comes with the territory. We all are standing on stolen land, and other people immigrate here. And someone coming in wearing a particular type of clothing doesn't threaten the Quebec culture at all. People are free to wear what they want. Me personally, I wholly oppose this charter because this charter is not intended to do what it is that they claim it's supposed to do. This is not going to make the state more secular. There's no provision in there to actually do that. They're literally refusing to remove the biggest religious symbol in the entire National Assembly. They're not going to do that. This is not about secularism in the state, and I wholeheartedly support secularism in the state. That's a big thing that I'm pretty sure we can all agree with. But this charter won't do that. It's not intending to target that and to build that. It's intended to attack people for wearing something. The last time I checked, even if you did force someone against their will to stop wearing some type of religious clothing, they're still going to be that religion. I think this charter is definitely intended to assault people, to assault minorities inside Quebec, and doesn't do anything of which it is claimed that it is going to do. I would think that if the Parti Québécois really wanted us to believe this was about building secularism in the state, the first thing they should do is remove that gigantic crucifix from the National Assembly. But they have no intention of doing that. This is the Parti Québécois, not the Parti State Atheism. It isn't. This is about preserving, for their party is all about preserving Quebec culture. And Catholicism is a big part of that. So they're not, I don't believe them for a second when they say they really want a secular state. Because if they really were, then they would take that out of the National Assembly, and they have no intention of doing so. People have a right to religious wear, whether somebody likes it or not. We have to consider the context in which the religious wear exists. Somebody wearing a hijab or a burqa here is different than if they wore it in an Islamic republic. It is in a different context. If one is to wear it in an Islamic republic, the woman would be forced to wear that against her will, depending on the country, meaning she would be forced to do it. However, there are no such laws forcing women to wear that kind of thing in Canada. In fact, if a woman chose not to and her family tried to force her to do it, there are things like women's shelters and other such services about which she could leave and would receive assistance to get away from that kind of environment. There's nothing requiring a woman to wear it here. She's not forced to. They can freely choose to do so. And of course, I'm just using this as an example because it's the burqa is the one that's really brought up the most. Of course, I disagree with the use of the burqa. I think it's a really backwards idea. But essentially, it is still a free choice. However, I would still place restrictions on that. Using any government service, you would have to remove it. Using a bank, you would have to, like anything covering your face, you would have to remove it at a bank. If you were stopped by the police, you would have to remove it. The Supreme Court of Canada ruled that while religion is a right, it is not an ultimate right, meaning it can't supersede the rights of others, and it cannot supersede the functioning of the state. It's not just something that you can do whatever you want with. There are reasonable limits to the freedom of religion. People don't seem to understand that there are Supreme Court Canada rulings on these things for a purpose, so that we can decide issues like this. The freedom of religion does not have the right to interfere with the functioning of the state or infringe on the rights of others. In truth, there's a much bigger problem here. There is a real problem of immigrants not being integrated into the rest of society. Now, that is not to say that they don't want to, or that they are somehow choosing not to. I'm sure there's certainly a small minority that choose to, but overall, there are services, language classes, stuff like that to help integrate them into the rest of society. However, there is a great deal of resistance to them being there. You can't really complain that they're not being integrated with the rest of society when they are being ostracized. There are acts of violence being carried out against them. They are being denied service in certain places. A lot of us have seen the footage of Muslims being harassed on public transportation inside Quebec. If people are to complain that they are not fully integrating into society, well, they would certainly have to stop interfering with that process. They are ostracized from many places. And when they're ostracized like that, they tend to be around people who don't ostracize them. Thus, the integration isn't made because of the racist, prejudiced views of many people. I'm not singling anyone out with this because racial prejudice can come from all racial demographics, all income demographics as well. There is an integration problem in Quebec, but that problem stems largely from them being pushed out. And things like this proposed charter would do exactly that. It would essentially almost criminalize religious symbols like that. That's one of the things that we are attacked for so much, that supposedly we as Marxists want to abolish all religion all the time and take away people's religious beliefs. Well, it's not really true, but in this case, we are seeing a deliberate campaign to ostracize particular minorities and immigrants out of the mainstream of Quebec society, and this causes social alienation among them. I am directly against this charter for the simple reason that it is not designed to make things better. It is not designed to bring the working class together. This is designed to create hostilities. This was designed to pander to the extreme right in Quebec, to bring them on as supporters for the PQ. This does not bring the workers together. This does not resolve or even attempt to deal with the contradictions that exist within racial, ethnic, and religious groups inside Quebec. It's in fact intended to make them more antagonistic. This was not designed to resolve contradictions. It was designed to make them worse. It's on these grounds that I oppose the charter. If there was something of real substance that brought people together and created actual religious separation from the state, then I would certainly back it. But in this case, this is a very reactionary policy only intended to divide the working class, and a divided working class cannot defend its interests. Thank you for watching. Go ahead, rate, comment, subscribe, share on various social media, and if you want, there's some other great content here you could check out.